Pressure does not build character. It reveals it. Sit with that for a second, because most people think the goal is to learn how to handle pressure better, but that is not the real danger. The real danger is what pressure turns you into. It can cost you money. It can cost you sleep. It can destroy a plan you spent years building. But even that is not the worst part. The worst part is what happens inside you while all of that is happening. You become impatient. You become desperate. You start demanding answers that were never yours to control. You explain yourself to people who never asked. You make decisions just to make the discomfort stop, not because the decision is right, because waiting hurts more. And slowly, quietly, you stop recognizing yourself. That is the battle we are actually here to fight. Because the goal is not to build a life where pressure never comes. That life does not exist. The goal is to become someone pressure cannot easily move. A river does not carve stone because it is gentle. It carves stone because it never stops. So if you came here hoping I would teach you how to escape pressure, I have to disappoint you. This video is not about escaping the storm. It is about learning how to stand inside it without becoming someone you do not respect. Pressure doesn't need to disappear. You need to become harder to move. That is the spine of everything we are about to cover. And I want you to think about something before we go any further. When pressure hits you, what happens first? Do you freeze? Do you snap? Do you go completely quiet? Or does your mind immediately run toward the worst possible outcome? Be honest. Because whatever your answer is, you are probably not fighting a battle as unique as you think. Millions of people are fighting the same war. They just fight it silently. And the real battlefield is not your schedule. It is not your inbox. It is not even the situation itself. It is the decision you make about who you are going to be while the situation is still happening. That is why these 10 lessons are not about becoming more comfortable. They are about staying in command when comfort is no longer available. Epictetus learned this without freedom. Marcus Aurelius practiced it while carrying the weight of an empire through plague and war. Seneca faced the possibility of death while writing about how a person should meet fear. Different lives, different pressures. Same question. What remains under your control when everything around you starts moving? And that brings us to the first battle. The moment almost everyone loses before they even realize the fight has started. The most dangerous moment under pressure is not when everything goes wrong. It is the moment immediately after. Because that is when you decide whether the event controls you, or you control what happens next. Think about how fast this moment actually moves. Something happens. And before your wisdom even wakes up, your mind has already fired an answer. Panic, attack, shut down. Run. Epictetus said something that sounds simple until you actually try to live it. You are not disturbed by what happens to you. You are disturbed by the judgment you attach to it in that same second. The email is neutral. The silence from someone you love is neutral. Your mind is the one adding the sentence, "This is a disaster." Imagine you get a message that changes how you see someone you trust. Your fingers are already moving toward the keyboard. You already know exactly what you want to say back. And then you stop. That pause right there can save you from a decision your emotions would have made in 10 seconds flat. 10 seconds of silence. One slow breath. Then one question. What is the next move that is actually inside my control? Not the whole relationship, not the whole future, just the next move. You have probably done this without even noticing. Reacted first and thought second. Most of us have. That's not a character flaw. That's just an untrained reflex. Think about how many decisions in your life were actually made inside that first careless 6 seconds. The reply you regretted sending, the relationship you ended out of pride instead of clarity, the opportunity you turned down because fear reached your mouth before judgment did. They happened because the fastest voice in the room got to speak first instead of the wisest one. So build this pause on purpose. Practice it on the small stuff. The rude comment, the delayed reply, the mildly annoying detour in your day. Because the muscle you build on small pressure is the exact same muscle that ends up saving you during the pressure that actually matters. But there is a problem. Even if you learn to pause perfectly, you can still make the wrong decision. Because sometimes the thing controlling you isn't the event. It's the story you told yourself about the event. Fear does not speak in facts, it speaks in fiction. And it writes fast. Someone leaves your message on read. Fact, they have not replied yet. That is the entire fact. Everything else is a story your mind adds for free. They are angry, they are losing interest, they are talking about you. You are being rejected. None of those are fact, not one of them. That is where fear begins writing fiction, and you start reacting to a story instead of a situation. Epictetus taught this same idea 2,000 years before anyone had a phone to stare at. We suffer not from the event, we suffer from the meaning we attach to it before we even confirm it is true. Here is a test you can actually run this week. Every time your mind jumps to the worst case, write down what you are assuming versus what you actually know. You will notice the list of actual facts is usually painfully short, and the list of assumptions is enormous. That gap is not an accident. Your brain would rather hand you a bad story than sit in the uncomfortable feeling of not knowing anything yet. Seneca put it plainly a long time before any of us had a phone to refresh. We suffer more often in imagination than we ever do in reality. That sounds simple. Try actually believing it at 11 at night, while you are staring at the ceiling replaying a conversation that has not even finished happening yet. Here is a small habit worth stealing from that idea. Every time your mind spirals toward the worst case, write down what actually happened by the end of the day. Not what you feared, what actually occurred. Do that enough times and something interesting happens. Your nervous system slowly starts trusting you a little more the next time fear shows up uninvited. That trust is not confidence in the outcome. It is confidence in your own ability to tell the difference between a fact and a feeling. There is a reason knowing the facts is sometimes still not enough, though. Because fear does not only speak through your thoughts, it speaks through your body first. Your body can react before your judgment even gets a vote. Heart rate spikes. Breathing goes shallow. Jaw tightens without you asking it to. Stoicism does not demand that the first reaction disappear. That reaction is not even yours to control. It happens in a part of you older than reasoning itself. What Stoicism demands is something narrower and far more achievable. That the first reaction does not become the final decision. This is what the old Stoics called the ruling faculty. The part of you capable of watching the reaction happen without being owned by it. That sounds simple to say. Try doing it while your hands are actually shaking. Here is the honest truth about that gap. Knowing something and actually using it in the moment are two very different things. So build the skill on small pressure first, not the crisis, the traffic, the slow line, the mildly annoying message. Practice noticing the reaction without obeying it immediately. Because the body that learns to pause during small pressure is the exact same body that pauses during the pressure that actually matters. Watch a great athlete when everything is on the line. The free throw, the final second, the moment the whole game is balanced on. You expect frantic movement. Instead, they slow down. The moment gets bigger. Their movements get smaller. That is mastery. Not removing the pressure, reducing the wasted movement inside it. None of them look frantic right when it counts. Not because their body stopped reacting. Their body still spikes. It always does. What separates them is that their ruling faculty stayed in charge while the body did its thing underneath. That is not talent. That is not luck. That is the exact discipline Epictetus was describing. The reaction happens. The response is chosen. You are allowed to train that same discipline starting tonight, not during the actual crisis. Before it. That sounds obvious when I say it out loud. Almost nobody actually does it in advance. Once your body stops fighting the moment, you can finally see the real problem clearly. And most people make that problem 10 times bigger than it actually is. You check the email. Nothing. You check again. Nothing. You put the phone down. 30 seconds later, you pick it up again. Still nothing. At some point you are no longer waiting for an answer. You are waiting for permission to feel safe. And that is exactly where uncertainty turns dangerous. Pressure becomes unbearable the second your mind demands an answer before reality has actually given you one. Waiting to hear back about a job you actually wanted. Waiting on medical results. Waiting for someone to decide whether they are staying or leaving. Waiting to see if the money comes through in time. None of those are small. All of them share the exact same trap. The hardest part of uncertainty is not knowing. It is believing you need to know right now. Your mind treats the waiting itself as the emergency. It isn't. The waiting is just time. What you do inside that time is the actual emergency. If your workload feels impossible, finish the one thing that actually matters most today, not the whole list. If you are waiting on an answer you cannot control, decide what you will actually do with today regardless of what that answer turns out to be. You do not need the whole staircase to appear before you climb it. You only ever need to see the next stair. There is a quiet trap hiding inside this entire lesson though, waiting for certainty before you allow yourself to move at all. You may never get full certainty that your next step is the perfect one. Nobody actually does. Not the person running the company, not the general planning the operation, not the person online who looks like they have it all completely figured out. You are only ever working with the best information available to you right now. That has always been enough to take one honest step. Demanding perfect certainty before acting is not really caution. Most of the time it is just fear wearing a slightly more respectable costume. But there is one thing even the best plan in the world cannot give you: control over the outcome. You are not exhausted because the situation is difficult. You are exhausted because you are demanding that reality be different before you decide how you will respond to it. Say that back to yourself for a second. It changes the entire fight. The past will not negotiate with you. Other people will not obey the script you wrote for them in your head. The outcome will not ask what you originally wanted from it. Epictetus built an entire philosophy around one blunt distinction. Some things are up to you. Some things never were. Your effort, your integrity, your response, those are yours completely. Their opinion. Yesterday, the final result. Those were never yours to command in the first place. Think about how much of your day actually goes toward the second category without you even realizing it. Refreshing for news that has not changed. Rehearsing a conversation with someone who has already made their decision. Replaying a mistake that cannot be unmade no matter how many times you replay it. None of that is discipline. It only feels like discipline because it is exhausting. Standing on a beach demanding the ocean stop making waves accomplishes exactly nothing. A sailor who understands this does not waste his breath arguing with the sea. He adjusts the sail. Marcus Aurelius carried an empire through plague and war using this exact same distinction. He could not control the plague. He could not control which senators betrayed him. He could control how he governed on the specific day in front of him. That is where his entire power actually lived. Here is the sentence worth actually replacing in your own head this week. Why is not this going the way I wanted? Swap it for something more useful. Given that this is reality right now, what can I actually do with it? That sounds like a small change in wording. It is not. One sentence keeps you stuck arguing with something that cannot hear you. The other one hands you back your next move. And once you finally stop fighting reality itself, you discover something uncomfortable. You discover exactly where all that energy was actually going. You open your email. Refresh, nothing, open your messages. Nothing, check your bank account. Close it. Open it again. Check your phone. Put it down. Pick it up again. And you call this staying informed. Sometimes it is just anxiety looking for another screen to live inside. Pressure does not always make you panic. Sometimes it makes you compulsively check. Here is the deeper principle underneath that. Whatever controls your attention controls your emotional state. Not your circumstances, not the news, not the message you are waiting for, whatever you keep pointing your mind at. None of that checking is laziness. It looks like effort. It even feels like effort. But it is command of your own mind quietly handed over to whatever is loudest. The Stoics did not think of attention as a productivity tool. They thought of it as the one territory a person never has to surrender. Everything else can be taken. Your attention only leaves if you let it. So the discipline is not check your phone less. The discipline is notice what you are pointing your mind at. And ask whether you actually chose that, or whether pressure chose it for you. Try this the next time you feel your attention getting pulled somewhere it did not choose to go. Do not fight it directly. Just name it out loud. This is not mine. I did not choose this. Sounds small. It is not. Naming it is often enough to hand the wheel back to you. Think about someone waiting on test results who spends the entire day refreshing a portal that has not updated once. The refreshing does not change the result. It only guarantees the day is lost twice. Once to the waiting, once to the refreshing. That is what pressure does when your attention is not guarded. It charges you rent on time you were never going to get back either way. But protecting your attention is completely useless if pressure has already quietly changed the way you see yourself. Maybe you have failed more times than you expected to by now. Maybe you are behind where you thought you would already be. Maybe everyone around you seems to be moving forward, and you are quietly wondering what is wrong with you. Be careful here. This is exactly where pressure starts rewriting identity. You stop saying "I am struggling," and you start saying "I am a failure." Those two sentences are not the same. One describes a situation, the other becomes a prison. If this one lands for you, tell me in the comments which sentence you have been saying to yourself lately. You are having a hard season. You are not a hard season. Say that difference out loud if you have to. It matters more than it sounds like it does. A tree in winter looks half dead from the outside. Bare branches, frozen ground, no visible life anywhere on it. But underneath the surface, the roots never stopped working. The tree never once confused the season with what it actually is. Here is the real question hiding inside this entire lesson. Not "why is this happening to me?" Instead, what has this pressure quietly made me start believing about myself? Marcus Aurelius kept returning to one idea through every war and every betrayal he survived. His circumstances would keep changing constantly. His character was the one thing that remained entirely his responsibility. Your circumstances are not your identity. They never were. They are just the season you happen to be standing in right now. Here is why this distinction matters more than it might sound like it does. Once you fuse your identity to a hard chapter, every new setback stops feeling like an event. It starts feeling like proof. Proof that you were right about yourself all along. That belief becomes a filter. It quietly rejects anything that contradicts it and highlights anything that confirms it. Breaking that filter does not happen through one motivational sentence you hear in a video. It happens through small, repeated proof. Every time you keep your word to yourself during a hard moment, you are collecting evidence for a different verdict. You are not building confidence by hoping to feel different one day. You are building it slowly by collecting receipts. Here is what makes this genuinely difficult. Nobody hands you the season back and asks whether you want to keep believing what it taught you. You have to notice the belief is even there before you can question it. Ask yourself honestly, what is one thing you have quietly started believing about yourself because of what you are going through right now? Then ask whether that belief is actually true, or whether it is just loud. And once your identity stops depending on the season, you face the next pressure waiting right behind it. Other people's opinions of you. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do under pressure is nothing. Do not explain. Do not defend. Do not chase. Do not convince. Let people misunderstand you. That does not mean become arrogant. It means stop treating every misunderstanding like an emergency. You do not owe everyone an explanation. Read that again. You do not owe everyone access to your reasoning. You do not owe everyone a defense. And you definitely do not owe everyone your peace. The moment someone misunderstands you, there is one pressure most people never realize they are carrying. The need to be understood. You feel an almost physical urge to correct the story. So you explain. Then you explain the explanation. Then you explain why you even felt the need to explain it in the first place. And somehow, the person who misunderstood you now quietly controls your entire evening. You have probably done this without even noticing it happening in real time. Most of us have. It feels productive in the moment. It rarely is. Epictetus would ask a much harder question underneath all of that. Why did their opinion become your emergency? Their judgment belongs to them. Your integrity belongs to you. Confusing those two is where most of this exhaustion actually begins. Now the nuance. If you made a mistake, own it. If you hurt someone, apologize. If someone genuinely deserves an explanation, give one. But if someone simply decided to misunderstand you on purpose, let them. You should still care deeply about being honest, about keeping your word, about treating people with real dignity even when it costs you something. That is respect. Keep chasing that one for the rest of your life. Approval is a completely different currency. It shifts with the room. It shifts with someone's mood. It shifts with information they do not even have about your actual situation. Building your peace on something that's unstable is like building a house on top of a wave. It will never hold still long enough to protect anything. Notice how much of the explanation trap is really about fear of being misjudged, not fear of the truth. Fear of a version of you existing in someone else's head that you did not approve. Here is the uncomfortable part. Someone can hold an inaccurate picture of you for the rest of their life, and there is genuinely nothing you can do about it. Eventually, you reach a point where you simply cannot control what people think of you. Nobody can. Not even the people you admire most. You can only decide what their reaction is allowed to turn you into. There is an old Stoic idea called amor fati, love of fate. People misunderstand it constantly. It does not mean pretending to love your suffering. It means something far more practical than that. I stop wasting energy wishing the event had happened differently. The pressure does not have to be good. You do not have to call the pain a blessing just to survive it. You only have to refuse to waste it. A blacksmith does not apologize to the metal for the heat. The heat and the hammer are exactly what turn raw material into something actually useful. That sounds simple to say. Try believing it while you are still standing in the middle of the fire. But here is what is actually true either way. The fire is going to happen whether you resist it or work with it. Only one of those choices leaves you shaped by the end of it instead of just burned. Notice this does not ask you to pretend the pain does not hurt. Stoicism is not about numbing yourself to what is real. Some things are genuinely tragic, and pretending otherwise is not wisdom. It is denial wearing a philosophical costume. And this is not permission to stay somewhere that is destroying you. Acceptance does not mean sit quietly while someone mistreats you. It does not mean tolerate abuse. It does not mean refuse to change a bad situation because you have decided to be zen about it. Acceptance means you stop arguing with the fact that the situation exists so you can finally decide what to do about it. That is a very different thing than surrender. Surrender stops moving. Acceptance is what actually lets you move. The actual ask is smaller and somehow harder. Even while the event is painful, what will you choose to do with what remains afterward? That question is what separates resilience from denial. Think about someone who lost a job they actually loved. Amor fati does not ask them to be grateful for the loss. It asks a narrower question. Given that this happened, what is still available to you? A skill they never had time to build before. A direction they were too comfortable to consider. Nobody is promising the loss was secretly good, only that the energy spent wishing it away could be spent somewhere that actually moves you forward. That is the whole shift. Not gratitude for the wound, just refusal to let it be wasted twice. Once by happening, and once by being endlessly resented instead of used. And that brings us to the final lesson, the one sitting quietly beneath all the others. Now we reach the lesson that makes the other 9 actually matter. Because knowing something and actually using it are 2 very different things, and this is where it all finally gets tested at once. Go back through everything we just covered. The reaction you learned to pause. The story your fear tried to write for you as fact. The body that reacts before judgment gets a vote. The answer you kept demanding before reality was ready to give it. The reality you finally stopped fighting. The attention that kept quietly leaking somewhere else. The season you almost mistook for your entire identity. The opinions you stopped treating as emergencies. The pain you learned to stop wasting. Every single one of those was pointing toward the same hidden target the whole time. You probably came into this video thinking the goal was learning to control pressure. It isn't. The goal is learning to control yourself while pressure is happening. That sounds like the real answer. It is close. But it is still not quite right. Because even control is the wrong word. Control implies force. Gripping something tighter until it obeys. The actual goal is smaller than that, and somehow much harder. Remain yourself. Not conquer the pressure, not defeat it, not even fully control your reaction to it. Simply remain who you actually are, while something is trying very hard to make you into someone else. That is the real thing more dangerous than pressure. Not panic, not fear. It is quietly becoming someone smaller than you actually are, simply because nobody was watching closely enough to notice the shift. Marcus Aurelius called the part of you capable of resisting that shift the ruling faculty, the one piece of you that circumstance can pressure, but never actually own, unless you hand it over voluntarily. A soldier walking into real danger cannot control the weather or the enemy or what happens an hour from now. He can control his footing, his breathing, his very next honest movement. That is your entire job too. Not to make pressure disappear, to remain exactly who you are while it is standing directly in front of you. Pressure does not arrive once and then leave you alone forever. It comes back, different shape, different name, same exact test underneath it. The person who already survived one storm is not immune to the next one, but they walk into it, carrying something the untested version of themselves never had. Proof. Proof that the pause actually works. Proof that the body can be steadied on command. Proof that identity can survive a hard season fully intact instead of being rewritten by it. That proof is what you take with you. So let us bring this all the way home. Your first reaction does not have to become your final decision. Fear will keep writing fiction. You do not have to publish it as fact. Your body will react before your judgment does. That reaction does not get the final vote. You do not need the whole staircase to appear before you take the next stair. Reality was never going to negotiate with you. Stop paying it energy for refusing to. Your attention is the one resource pressure cannot take without your permission. A hard season is not your identity. Do not let it quietly rename you. Other people's opinions were never emergencies. Stop treating them like one. Refuse to waste the pain. You do not have to call it a blessing to make use of it. And remember the real lesson underneath all 9 of the others. Pressure doesn't need to disappear. You need to become harder to move. A mountain does not become powerful because the storm finally stopped. It becomes powerful because the storm never once moved it. So here is your homework before you close this video. Comment 1 word below. Just 1 word. The pressure you are finally ready to stop running from. I read every single one of them. This channel exists because of people exactly like you who refuse to stay soft when life asks them to get strong. If this video found you at the right moment, send it to the one person you know is carrying something heavy right now. Subscribe if you want more of this every single week. Not motivational noise. Actual philosophy you can use the next time your hands are shaking and you still have to decide something anyway. Until next time, don't panic. Master pressure.